When a judge, someone who has seen humanity at its absolute worst, calls a crime utterly depraved, you know it's beyond horrific. And at the center of this nightmare, a woman who turned trust into terror, a woman who was supposed to protect, but became the monster in the dark. Anthony Delgado was just 17 months old, barely beginning to explore the world. His laughter-filled rooms, his tiny hands reached out in curiosity, and like all children, he trusted without question. His mother, his family, even the people they relied on to care for him. But trust is a dangerous thing when placed in the wrong hands. Gloria Fields was supposed to be a helping hand, a neighbor, someone Anthony's mother, Marta, believed she could count on during a hectic move. A simple favor, watching over Anthony for the weekend. What could possibly go wrong? Well, everything. February 21st, 2016. A day that should have been just another evening. But behind closed doors, something unspeakable was happening. Gloria sent a casual text. Anthony had fallen. Kids fall all the time, right? But here's the thing. This wasn't a scraped knee or a harmless tumble. It was the beginning of something far worse. This wasn't an accident. This was a slow, deliberate descent into horror. The bruises told the story. The pain etched into Anthony's tiny body was a silent scream for help that never came. By the time the truth surfaced, it was too late. The community, the city, even seasoned investigators. Everyone was left reeling from the brutality of what had really happened. And if you think this was just a moment of poor judgment, think again. Gloria Fields wasn't some innocent bystander who lost control for a second. She had a record, a rap sheet that should have been a neon warning sign flashing, "Do not trust." 9 arrests, not for shoplifting or parking tickets. No, we're talking about drugs, violence, and a track record of neglect so severe she lost custody of her own children. And yet somehow, she was left alone with Anthony. Marta never saw it coming, and honestly, who would? Gloria played the part well, a friendly face, a helpful neighbor, a seemingly safe option. But predators don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they smile. By the time Marta realized who Gloria really was, the damage was irreversible. A mother's worst nightmare had unfolded in real time, and the person she had trusted most had destroyed everything. The fallout, unimaginable. Some betrayals leave scars, others leave something far worse. And as we peel back the layers of this case, one question lingers. How many times do the warning signs need to flash before we pay attention? Before we dive deeper, a huge thank you to all my incredible viewers and subscribers. Your support, through likes, shares, and comments, makes it possible to bring these stories to light. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our growing community of true crime enthusiasts. Now let's dig in, because this story, it only gets darker from here.
February 19th, 2016, a day that should have been just another ordinary Friday. But for 6-year-old Anthony, it was the beginning of something horrifying. His mother, Marta, left him in the care of Gloria Fields, a woman she trusted. That trust would prove to be a devastating mistake. By the next day, February 20th, things took a dark turn. Gloria wasn't spending the weekend watching cartoons with Anthony or playing games like any responsible babysitter. No, she was too busy getting high. Marijuana, harder substances, you name it, she was using it. Her mind was clouded, her judgment shattered, and the consequences unforgivable. That afternoon, she took Anthony out, not for a fun trip to the park, but to Buffalo Exchange. The store's bright lights and bustling shoppers couldn't mask the truth. Something was terribly wrong. People noticed. They saw the bruises, the marks, the undeniable signs of abuse. But no one stepped in, no concerned stranger, no frantic phone call to the authorities. Just a silent collective shrug. Maybe they thought, not my problem. Maybe they had seen too much of the world's ugliness to care. Either way, their inaction sealed Anthony's fate. By February 21st, it was already too late. Marta received a text from Gloria. Anthony fell. A simple message, a blatant lie. Anthony hadn't just fallen. He had been tortured. His tiny body was covered in wounds, evidence of a nightmare that had lasted for 2 agonizing days. This wasn't a case of neglect. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was relentless, calculated cruelty. Gloria Fields didn't just hurt Anthony, she unleashed a storm of violence on a defenseless child. She shook him with a force, each violent jolt a testament to her unhinged rage. His body, bruised, battered, and broken, told a story more horrifying than any words ever could. And just when you think it couldn't get any worse, it did. The abuse escalated to something so vile, so monstrous, that even the coldest hearts would shudder at the details. What happened next was beyond comprehension. It was evil in its purest form, and yet for 2 days the world just watched.
Gloria Fields didn't just cross the line, she obliterated it. She took a pencil and used it to commit an act so vile it's difficult to even put into words. The damage she inflicted on Anthony wasn't the result of a loss of control or a fleeting moment of rage. No, this was intentional, calculated, pure evil. For 2 agonizing days, Anthony's world was nothing but suffering. It wasn't a single act of abuse. It was a relentless assault, an escalating horror show where he was the unwilling star. The violence didn't simmer down. It built to a terrifying climax. And when she finally realized Anthony's tiny body couldn't take any more, she made a call. 911 paramedics arrived to find chaos. But one thing stood out: Gloria Fields. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't sobbing. She wasn't even pretending to be a distraught caregiver. Instead, she was eerily detached, as if she were watching the aftermath of a bad decision, rather than the consequences of unimaginable cruelty. The emergency team worked frantically, but deep down, they knew. Anthony was already slipping away. Every second that passed was another they couldn't get back. The rush to Staten Island University Hospital felt endless, but it wouldn't have mattered if they'd had all the time in the world. By the time they arrived, Anthony's heart had already given up. His tiny body couldn't fight anymore. The official cause of death? Cardiac arrest. But the medical examiner's findings would reveal something much worse. The autopsy was a horror story in itself. This wasn't a case of a child taking a fall. Anthony's body told the truth Gloria tried to hide. Bruises, broken bones, trauma so severe it was clear he had been brutally beaten. His head injuries alone were catastrophic. He had been shaken, thrown, and struck with such force that survival wasn't even an option. The brutality was staggering, and there was only one person responsible: Gloria Fields. At first, she clung to her lies. She blamed her meds, claimed she blacked out, anything to dodge the reality of what she had done. But the investigators weren't buying it. 40 hours. That's how long they pushed, questioned, and cornered her with the weight of her crimes. And eventually, the walls she built around her lies started to crumble. Then she cracked. Her confession came, but not in the way you might expect. No sobbing, no remorse, no desperate pleas for forgiveness, just cold, detached reasoning. I just wanted to inflict some pain on something else because I was in pain. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't horrified by what she had done. She simply justified it, as if Anthony had been nothing more than a punching bag for her own misery. A child, a helpless, trusting child, became the target of her rage, and in her twisted mind, that somehow made sense. The truth was out, but no confession, no trial, and no sentence could ever undo the nightmare that unfolded in that apartment. Anthony's story was one of innocence, stolen by a monster hiding in plain sight. And for that, there could never be true justice. Only the hope that monsters like Gloria Fields are never given the chance to strike again.
Gloria Fields sat in that courtroom, her face a mask of indifference, as if the weight of her actions hadn't even registered. The air was thick with tension, every eye fixed on her. She was no ordinary defendant, and this was no ordinary trial. As Anthony's family took the stand, their words were like daggers, each one a reminder of the precious life stolen, a pain that would never heal. But Gloria? She sat there like a statue, her cold, unblinking stare fixed ahead. Not a single tear. Not a hint of remorse, just silence. And in that silence, the gravity of the charges against her grew heavier. First-degree murder, aggravated assault, child endangerment, and criminal possession of a weapon. There was no escaping the mounting evidence. The bruises, the trauma, the brutality of what she'd done. As the details of her horrific actions were laid bare for the world to see, Gloria remained unmoved, a blank slate. The room buzzed with grief, but she was as still and silent as ever. Her defense team, however, had other plans. They grasped at any straw they could, even briefly flirting with the idea of an insanity plea, suggesting that her drug use had affected her judgment, but that too was quickly dismissed.
As the trial unfolded, it became painfully clear that Gloria's actions weren't the result of some fleeting impulse or a momentary loss of control. No, this was deliberate. It wasn't an outburst of anger gone wrong. It was calculated, cruel, and chilling. But Gloria's defense team wasn't ready to give up just yet. They scrambled for another angle, suggesting the police had mistreated her during the interrogation, claiming she'd been forced into confessing. But the judge wasn't having it. The evidence was too clear. Gloria's confession came after 40 hours of questioning, and nothing about her statements hinted at manipulation. It was pure truth, spilling from her lips. The truth about the horrors she had unleashed on an innocent child. When the judge finally delivered the sentence, 23 years to life, it felt almost anticlimactic. Some believed it was far too lenient for the monstrous acts she had committed. The room was thick with tension, and on one side Anthony's family sat, their faces etched with grief, frustration, and exhaustion. One of Anthony's relatives, his aunt, spoke to the press, her voice heavy with emotion. 23 years to life doesn't bring my nephew back. It doesn't give us the closure we need. But at least we know she'll never hurt another child again. The family's relief was tempered by the sting of injustice. After everything they'd been through, this sentence felt like a harsh reminder that Anthony's life, his tragic, violent end, didn't seem to matter enough to the justice system. As they left the courtroom, one of Anthony's cousins summed it up. "She took everything from us. We're left picking up the pieces, and 23 years doesn't change that." The sense of loss was undeniable. No matter how long Gloria stayed behind bars, it wouldn't bring Anthony back. No amount of time in prison could ever erase the trauma they would carry for the rest of their lives. The defense team tried to paint Gloria as a broken woman, someone crushed by life's burdens, reacting to years of pain and struggle. They revealed that she had lost custody of her children, and that seemed to spark something dark inside her. But no matter how tragic her own story was, it could never justify what she did to Anthony. His death was inexcusable, a brutal act of malice that no amount of emotional pain could explain away. Gloria's failed attempt at a defense wasn't lost on anyone. Her own history was unraveling before the court. Her unstable behavior, past arrests, and substance abuse all pointed to a woman who had long teetered on the edge. And yet it still didn't excuse the cruelty she inflicted on Anthony. The neighbors who lived near Gloria were quick to speak up, offering chilling insights into her erratic past. They described her as unpredictable, volatile even. A few remembered witnessing her tense, strange interactions with children, but most were too scared or too passive to intervene. One neighbor summed it up with a grim disbelief. "We all saw Gloria as a bit of a loner, but nobody ever thought she'd hurt a child. She was always talking about her struggles, but we never imagined it would go this far." No one ever imagined the depths of darkness she'd sink to.
Gloria seemed like she was on the verge of getting her life together. But then, something snapped. A neighbor who knew her from the block described how, despite her efforts to change, her relationships with her children were always strained. They used to visit her, but those visits were never filled with joy. "You could tell they were scared," one neighbor said. "It wasn't normal, but none of us thought she'd do something like this, not like that." The terror in their voice was palpable, but what if there had been warning signs all along? One neighbor suggested a chilling thought. There should be a system of awareness for people like her, those with a history of abuse. That way, no one else would fall victim to them. Unfortunately, it's clear that Gloria wasn't an isolated case. Studies show that individuals with a history of abuse, particularly those battling substance addiction, are much more likely to repeat their violent behaviors. In fact, research from the National Institute of Justice reveals a staggering statistic. 68 to 80% of people involved in child abuse or domestic violence cases are likely to reoffend. That's not a typo, it's a pattern. And let's not forget the horrifying connection between substance abuse and violence. The National Institute on Drug Abuse reports that 40 to 80% of people with a history of child abuse also suffer from addiction, a toxic cocktail to say the least. But it doesn't stop there. Mental health issues make the mix even more volatile. According to the American Psychological Association, conditions like depression, personality disorders, and PTSD, commonly found in abusers, only raise the chances of violent behavior. This sheds new light on Gloria's case. Without proper intervention or treatment, people like her, battling substance abuse and mental health struggles, are likely to repeat their destructive patterns. The sad truth? This could have been avoided with the right help. Gloria's actions didn't come out of nowhere. They were a symptom of a much larger, far darker problem. And unfortunately, she's not the only one.
The damage Gloria caused? Well, it's beyond devastating, especially when children are involved. In fact, the Bureau of Justice Statistics reveals a chilling truth. 70% of offenders convicted of violent crimes like abuse are likely to re-offend within just 5 years if they don't receive the right treatment. That statistic should send a cold shiver down your spine. And in Gloria's case, the potential for repeated harm was there, looming over everyone. So let me ask you, was Gloria a victim of her own pain and brokenness? Or did she deliberately choose to hurt an innocent child? Could she have been saved, or was she simply too far gone? I want to know what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Was 23 years to life truly enough to pay for what she did? Did justice really serve the victim here, or did it just make a weak attempt? If you think these stories deserve to be heard, if you believe in shedding light on the truth, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support, it makes all the difference. Together, we can make sure the voices of the victims are never silenced. And remember to hit that bell icon, because you don't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for being here, and as always, take care.